Good morning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our morning news live show. Oh, Instagram's having some difficulty. Hold on, friends. Let me get Instagram up. So welcome, everybody. We're going to be talking about Natural Health News live show. And today's topic is very close to my heart and should be close to all of your hearts, because we're talking about news specific to information and the latest research about heart health. So welcome to all of you. It seems like maybe the internet is running slow as people come on board. So for whatever reason, Instagram is having some difficulty here. Let me see if I can bring them live. I might have to cut my phone off. Okay, so we're going to talk about the latest news, and specifically, there are two big research articles that are coming from research in Germany. They were posted in the Journal of the American Medical Association. JAMA is our kind of core publication. It's come out both at the same time, specifically about asymptomatic cases as well, which this is one of those things where a lot of folks are like, well, I'll just be asymptomatic. It's all good. But the reality is that we are now seeing a viral hit to the heart. And that is being shown and showcased in MRIs, even heart biopsies. And the risk here is potential heart damage. And without our tickers being optimized, that will have a great impact on our health. So definitely, if you are interested in this topic, stay tuned. I will first talk about COVID news, and then we will get further into the specifics of this research, as well as some topics and tips and supplements that I recommend that you can deploy for your heart health. So I want to welcome all of you joining. I see a lot of familiar faces, and I've got to restart my phone to get Instagram up. So I will hopefully quickly do this. It's one of those things. Sometimes we have technical difficulties and we just roll with it. So let me take a quick little swig. I'm actually drinking Keto Coffee this morning in my Wild and Free mug. If you're curious about Keto Coffee, it's actually a really great way. Let me see if I can get Instagram up. It's a really great way to, I get my collagen and some extra protein in the morning via this like keto creamer I put in. It has a little grass-fed creamer, grass-fed milk, but it also has collagen and MCT oil, which is great. So super energy booster. Okay, let me grab Instagram. Let's cross our fingers. Good morning, Instagram. Yay, you guys are on. Welcome to our Natural News live show. We had some technical issues. Okay, so let's dig in. We're talking about heart health today, some new research, and we'll just dig right on into the world news. We have 16.7 million cases worldwide, and almost 4.5 million cases in the U.S. Big news here in the U.S. Yesterday, we had another big tally of fatalities, and we now are at 151,462 American citizens who have died because of COVID. That is putting us, at least for the year, in line to have COVID be the third leading cause of death this year. Hopefully we can minimize that, but it does look like that's where we're heading. I do want to make a note on the folks who have recovered, because this is really critical. Even though we have had 4.4 million positive individuals test. So these are not the multiple tests that people take, but literally people who have tested positive. Some might end up taking 6 or 8 tests that test positive, but it's only to date, it should be only recorded as one. 2.1 million have recovered. Oh, we got a little man in here. Hey, bud, can you go see Daddy? I don't know where my second side. Can you go see Daddy, bud? I don't have him in here. Okay, a little Spider-Man butt. Okay, so for all of you new joining, that's my little guy. I work from home, and just like many of you, our lives have been completely altered by COVID. But what I was saying was that we do have individuals who have recovered. Honey, can you please go see Daddy? Gabriel, please. I know, but you need to put shorts on if you're going to come in here. Okay. We also, that is good in terms of the folks who have recovered. some of those positives might be asymptomatic. And even though folks have recovered, the data today about heart, the impact on the heart, even for the asymptomatic cases, so they were, had no fever, no significant related symptoms that they were aware of, and they have COVID or had it and have recovered, there could still be viral impact on their heart. And we'll get into that further today. But I do want to make a note, now that we are at 100, Gabriel, please. Oh, you did. He got shorts on. Okay. I don't know where it is, honey. So you're going to have to wait. I know. Please go see Daddy. Please. Thank you, honey. Okay. Sorry. He wants the Bach remedies and I don't know where they are. Okay. The fatalities to date were almost at 151,500 cases. We now rank 6th in terms of the fatalities per capita. And that is something I really want to have everybody grasp, because there's a lot of anti-COVID, the anti-maskers, the COVID deniers, the folks who are trying to minimize this. But we rank 6th in terms of the fatalities per capita. So that is per every 100,000 individual is the kind of per capita basis. But we are number 6 on that list, even though we are leading the world. That is a good sign that our medical community is doing what they do best and to minimize the fatalities. But the reality is that COVID is such that it does even impact the healthiest of individuals, and the best and brightest of surgeons and medical providers and personnel cannot necessarily help people overcome this. So 3 states where we have seen a spike in fatalities in this week specifically, Arkansas, Montana, and Oregon have had an increase in fatalities. I'll just go down a few highlights for the states. California had another big day. They posted 6,000 new positive cases, and they had 73 fatalities. Florida had yet another big day. They had a 9,230 person positive case day. And they set a record yesterday, unfortunately, in fatalities. They had 191 Floridians die from COVID. That's significant. And some of these, I actually have friends that I worked with. They were my referral partners, some of my patients at home. Some of them are in the healthcare industry. And one of them posted 2 refrigerated trailers. They're an extension to the morgue at the hospital in St. Petersburg. And, I have everybody I know in my family who's ever had any type of medical issue has gone to this hospital. And it's just crazy to think that outside they have 2 massive, semi-trailers set up for folks who will die, who are in beds right now. That will be yet another fatality. In Texas also posted really, really big numbers yesterday. As far as positive tests, they come down a little bit. They're at 8,343 cases, and they had 164 fatalities. I do want to highlight that in the Rio Grande Hidalgo County, that is the major epicenter in Texas at this point, they have had a total of 467 deaths, and they have 800,000 people in that community. 467 are dead. And yesterday they had 27 deaths, the day before 23, the day before 25. And that is very significant. I see a comment, Lori, friend of a friend passed on Sunday in Texas, 48 years old. He was a nurse. Oh, I hate to hear that. Our frontliners are definitely taking the hit emotionally, mentally, physically, and putting their lives in front of ours, trying to fight this virus. And to be honest with you, it's very frustrating when you hear these crazy conspiracy videos and just outrageous, outlandish, details of trying to minimize this. This is really critical. And, what Lori's right. We do call those trucks death trailers. And, it is not to scare anybody or to give you anxiety, but this is the reality of COVID. We need to talk about it so we can understand the severity and extent of this. Okay. Georgia, guys, this is where I'm at. Georgia's up there. We are now at 175,000 cases. We've surpassed, we're close to surpassing New Jersey. We haven't surpassed them yet, but we're kind of blowing Illinois away. We have 4,209 cases, so 4,209 cases yesterday. We had an increase in our fatalities. We were at 54 cases. I do want to make a note about Florida. Apparently, and I didn't realize this, I've seen this a little bit in Georgia, but apparently a lot of high schools have just kind of waited out the commencement ceremonies or graduation ceremonies. And so I saw a few recently, like our neighborhood babysitters have had theirs locally here, but apparently it's still happening in some of the harder hit counties. And in Brevard County County in Florida, there are 300 graduates and their guests who gathered for a high school graduation ceremony. And apparently one of the individuals who gathered, it doesn't say if it was a student or an older family member, we don't know at this point, but one person showed up positive. Now, all 300 plus the guests, so let's just double that, let's say 600, are in a 14-day quarantine and self-confinement for attending this commencement. So even still, some of these large gatherings are proving to be unsafe. If anything, it's also a major inconvenience. 14 days in quarantining, many of those people might be working hourly jobs and might not be able to take a 2-week sick leave. And that is a big fear of professionals, that not all companies have grace and are forgiving in terms of you staying home. I do want to make a note before we dig into some news here in the US. Australia, they are also seeing some cluster hotspots arising in Sydney. So Australia still has that 6-week, they're in the middle of the 6-week Melbourne shutdown. And they also had that border, the restriction of folks traveling across South Wales into Melbourne. But Sydney now is showcasing, and I want to highlight the viral centers or where they're seeing the spread. 3 core areas: pubs, which are bars, restaurants, and schools. Those are 3 core areas where they're seeing clusters. That's something for us to take note as we're starting to think about school reopening. So let's dig into some new news here in the US. As far as school reopening goes, the teachers union, so the National Teachers Union, has given authorization should any teacher feel like their school reopening plans do not follow through on all of the safety measures or lack certain elements of protecting teachers and students, faculty, and staff at the school, then they will support a teacher strike. And that's a big statement. Also, the FDA approved emergency usage of one of their kind of rapid tests, but one of the rapid tests that they had authorized. They've authorized it to test asymptomatic carriers because we're seeing more asymptomatic spread, and the time frame with the delays, they're trying to circumvent the testing meltdown in terms of the delays. So that's just come down. I don't know how fast this will be implemented. I would imagine we're going to start seeing more asymptomatic cases. I don't know the details about this particular vendor and their accuracy rate. I mean, that's one of those things. Great, you get emergency authorization, but we want it to be accurate, and we want it to be data and information people can use. Okay, so also, this is a rainbow for all of us who love Jeopardy and Wheel of Fortune. We love that in our household. Brian really loves Jeopardy, and I grew up with my grandma always watching Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy. They are going to start filming again. And if any of you follow Alex Trebek, he's now 80, celebrated his 80th birthday. I think he's still battling pancreatic cancer. So, that's a highlight for any of us who want to escape out of the news and into trivia and just kind of wholesome, good entertainment. Also, this is really big. So, there's been more information from different groups of medical providers that often run cancer screenings, cancer tests. This is for pap smears, breast exams, prostate exams, all the different, colonoscopies, all of the tests, and even some procedures for precancerous or cancer screenings. Apparently, the stats right now are a third And this was based on 1,000 people that were assessed or analyzed, and asked. A third of Americans have missed cancer screenings this year. If you're like me, some of our doctors just, postponed our appointment, and some of these screenings you just can't move to telehealth. And so a third, just a third. So I've got about 100 of you on. So that's 33, 30 to 33% of you, or 30 to 33 of us on this view. And I'm going to count myself in one of those. I haven't had my, actually, I haven't really done my normal round of wellness visits. I was postponing until things settled down, and right now things haven't settled down. So 1,000 were inquired about it. It was 33 or 35% have missed actual screenings, and 43% have missed medical appointments altogether. So raise your hand if you missed a medical appointment. I actually had my cardiologist appointment. I always go. That actually had been postponed from, I think, January, February. They had it on a day that we were going to be in Florida for our wedding ceremonies. And even before that happened, they pushed it out. And so, this is really, really something that's a big concern for medical providers, because we want to be able to assess whether or not cancer is developing. So that is really big. The other thing that's really kind of interesting, there's some data, and I know a lot of my younger viewers who are pregnant or seeking to conceive have asked me to talk a lot about pregnancy and COVID, and we don't have a lot of info, not enough for me to quantify it in one specific video. And if I did, I would do it as an edited format, because it's not as broad of a topic. But I do want to note that one of the things that has been observed is that there are fewer premature deliveries during this time, and they don't know why. So the OBGYNs have reported that there are a significant, year-over-year, significant decrease in premature deliveries. And I don't know if that's women are just at home, they're feeling more nested, they're not having to go into an appointment, having gone through it. And I had high blood pressure in the latter part of the pregnancy. It was really stressful. And I just remember the stress just kind of was a snowball and added to more stress. And it makes you think about things that you don't want to think about. You got to ask all these questions. And I find that very interesting. So Linda Strickland said, that's interesting. It is very interesting. So I definitely think that is something that I know will be some follow-up down the road that we'll read about. But I've seen that. I don't have any, there's no clinical study on it. It's just some commentary. Collective commentary from the obstetrics community about that reduction. So I don't know. But there's something to be said also. We are seeing, and this was really big up in Massachusetts, but we're seeing more women choosing to labor at home. Doulas, I had a doula, or we had a doula. Doulas and midwives are coming into home centers, homes, and helping women give birth at home. That is wonderful if you are if you're low risk. I happen to not be in the low risk category. We've had some moms in our neighborhood that have still had their cesarean scheduled, for whatever reason. And, there's just a lot of angst that I know pregnant women are feeling about COVID, as well as a lot of information that we don't know. I will also say, to the one point about the COVID with babies and the pregnant moms, I've reported just the little details as we've kind of heard, like Mexico, the mother that had triplets, and one mother and one baby tested positive. I haven't seen any follow-up about those two, but what they have shown is that breast milk does help. It carries the antibodies from the mother to the baby. And we already know that breast milk is very protective. Infants gather a lot of the mother's gut bacteria to develop the baby's gut through breast milk. We can't get that anywhere else. And that's one of the big things when I work with folks later in their lives. And even, some of my pediatric cases, we talk about whether they were breastfed, and there's a big distinction between breastfed baby guts and non-breastfed baby guts. And there's definitely a big wave in the last 10 years of breast is best, and going back to breastfeeding, where, I grew up and my mom did not breastfeed. And so we had formula, which now is proving not to be great. But, at the end of the day, that is potentially another study we will see about breast milk being protective. And who knows, maybe there's more protection that comes with that if the mom has had COVID and is protecting her baby. So I don't know. We'll see. But also, not a study, but an opinion piece came out by a medical provider about face shields. And you guys know I've promoted this. I promoted the other face shields where this is really different, where you've got the foam piece and it creates a seal up here. It's not great for hair, but actually I've seen some of our folks that are in media, they're using this to protect their makeup versus having a mask, so they can just quickly cover this up, take that off and then present on camera and then put that back on to be protective on set. But one of the things that came out was whether that's more effective than just your normal mask. And while there's no substantial study, the only reference point to potentially this being highly effective is a 2014 study in the National Institute of Occupational Safety and Health that found that when workers wore this type of face mask in an office setting during the flu season, that it was 92% effective in minimizing exposure to the flu virus when being 6 feet or less, 6 feet or less apart. So that is very interesting. I think also coupling up the eye protection with the nose and mouth protection, you close all those gaps. So, the mask comes down to here. You can still have particulates come in back, so somebody's standing behind you, you're in line, somebody's coughing at you, that's not really protective. But if you have the the cover over your nose and your mouth, and you have the cover of the eyes, that might be more protective or give you an additional layer. So very critical. So let's dig into today's topics. Let me write down our 22:36. Okay. I timestamped this so folks who follow us and don't watch the live, they can just fast forward. Okay. So I want to dig into the big news, and my printer again is having some Wi-Fi issues, but 2 big studies came out in JAMA this week. The first is, and I just want to highlight, these are all studies in Germany. And so in Frankfurt, through the university and the medical community in Frankfurt, they studied Germans between April and June. And there's 2 segments of this study. The first study analyzes 100 patients, 100 COVID patients, and they do MRI scans of these patients, and they were identified, 78% of the COVID patients had cardiac, some sort of cardiac involvement from the COVID infection. 60% had ongoing heart inflammation. So, there are viral infections that can affect the heart tissue. And, there are some autoimmune issues that can also, the viruses that kick off autoimmunity, they can also have an involvement with the heart. So this is really critical. They did, they looked at 100 cases of known symptomatic COVID. 78% had cardiac involvement. Myocardiopathy is, or any type of myocardial inflammation and myocarditis were what they had identified as the kind of core involvement. Sometimes there's arterial elements, but they also said, well, let's look at asymptomatic and moderate cases. So the 100 were people who are more moderate and severe. Maybe some had been hospitalized for oxygen or even on ventilation. So that first part looks at, what we see as like a true like COVID case that can't breathe, they're on ventilation, or having respiratory distress, inflammatory challenges, the neuro-COVID, that severity level 6. But they also said, well, let's look at the asymptomatic, because that's really the big element. We know, the odds of severity are greater in some communities, age, underlying health conditions, as well as ethnicities. But what they said was, let's look at the asymptomatic and moderate symptoms. This is most of our population. So how much does COVID affect their heart tissue? So there's two parts of this one study. So this particular aspect looked at 67 patients. And I'll be honest with you, 67 is not a lot. In the COVID study world, we are not going to be seeing hundreds of thousands of patients. We're not going to be seeing necessarily a full scope of 45,000 patients, because we're often seeing an isolation or isolated communities. So for instance, Frankfurt, they looked at that population. There may be some ongoing global studies, but at this point it's isolated. So just know that. So they look at 67 Germans between April and June who had tested positive but are asymptomatic and or had mild symptoms. And they ran an assortment of tests. They ran MRIs of the heart tissue. They ran blood tests. So they looked at C-reactive protein, D dimers. They ran tests to look at some of those biomarkers. They also did heart biopsies. I know that sounds awful, but they got tissue of the heart and then they scoped it. What they identified was these individuals, all of them had inflamed heart tissue. And they had identified that some had myocardial inflammation and myocarditis. So very similar to the previous community that had the more severe state. So without fail, if you, and this is a PSA, if you feel like you had COVID or you've tested positive, maybe you're a presumptive positive, tested positive, you have family members who tested positive and it was asymptomatic, thankful, right? Or it was mild or it got severe, but they never got hospitalization. They didn't have CT scans or anything like that. And if you have family who do, it becomes critical that you hire a cardiologist to be on your health team. You get an appointment and you go and have some tests run, because the likelihood of heart damage is great, at least the likelihood of an inflammation of your heart. And what they look at is some of the symptoms. And this is where the asymptomatic cases might be showcasing heart-related challenges, but they're not, if you're not taking your pulse ox, oops, I got 20% on my battery. If you're not taking your, oops, this is all stuck. If you're not taking your pulse and you're measuring your heart rate, some people don't even realize their heart rate's in the high 90s and 100s. And, that heart pumping, that is a COVID situation. So COVID will exacerbate the heart. It starts to cause it to pump more. We see higher blood pressure values. We see potentially there might be some clotting involved that might start to articulate itself in the arterial walls. So there's definitely underlying elements that need to be assessed and you need to be observed. We need to rule out or get you in for baseline monitoring so you can evaluate your heart health. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you've recovered from COVID, 10 years down the road, you're exercising and all of a sudden you either have a heart attack, you could have a stroke, or your heart, there's a point where some of the damage, the heart tissue, the heart muscle just gets weakened. And sometimes the heavy pumping causes weakness. So this is something longer term. They're anticipating that individuals are going to have some degree of heart health assessments, maybe medication. One of the big things that gets triggered is Afib. And I know a lot of individuals that I've worked with, and my specialty is not cardiology, but I know a lot of folks that are being seen by cardiologists and have had procedures. one of the things that is really challenging for people to identify is they have AFib. People walk around with it and have no idea. And what COVID, we've shown, and if you watch my last video, like supplements for heart health, and it's related to some new research that we had like 3 weeks ago, COVID triggers AFib, and a lot of people have no idea. And the AFib can be managed it can be managed by medicine. Others have to go more intensely. They have to do procedures where they shock the heart and try and get it to go. They do ablation. But you need to know if you fall in this category. And so I hope that that's just one study. The second study, now this is the fascinating study. I really wish it would have printed out because it had some really cool slides. This also posted in JAMA. This also is in the same lines, same subset of German community. But this was an analysis of fatal patients. So patients who died of COVID. They looked at 39 German patients in Frankfurt. They were the ages of 78 and 89. And this was in kind of the major peak in Germany. It was April 8th through April 18th. So in 10 days, they looked at 39 patients and they autopsied their heart. All of them, when they pathologied the heart, so they look at the tissue under scope, all of the patients had COVID cells. The COVID virus was in the heart tissue. So that the spikes of the virus had infiltrated the heart tissue. Now, what's interesting is of the 39, 16 of these individuals did not show any heart inflammation. So that's very interesting. They don't know why. And it is kind of counterintuitive, or it is a little different than the previous report that I just shared with you, where they looked at the asymptomatic and moderate symptoms, where these individuals showcased heart inflammation. So I don't know why that is, but it is something that they had identified. 16 of 39 did not have any heart inflammation, but all of them had COVID. The virus had hit the heart. So it is a very important thing to note that if an individual does have COVID, that virus will attack the heart. The determination then is whose heart is more susceptible to damage. And potentially big questions that occur. Why are 16 patients who died of COVID, they have the development of the virus in their heart tissue? Why isn't their heart inflamed? Now, it could very well be that they may have died of pneumonia before the acceleration of this disease. So that could be one hypothesis. Another could be maybe they were on heart medications already. Maybe they already had heart issues and they were taking anti-inflammatory medication to lower, congestive heart failure, or maybe they had heart attacks. So that we don't know yet. But there are a lot of questions that this study poses. And most importantly, as I know many of you want to know, is, okay, well, what do I do? How can I prevent heart disease, heart damage? How can I invigorate my heart tissue? And so I just want to highlight, kind of the core aspect of heart health and healing heart tissue. There are an exorbitant amount of clinical studies that showcase Coenzyme Q10. And this is a really wonderful supplement that you can take over the counter. Coenzyme Q10 is found in all aspects of your heart tissue as well as your gum tissue. And there's also a direct, oral heart link. So a lot of times folks that have, gingivitis or gum disease will also have heart disease. And so they've bridged that gap that our oral health is directly connected to our heart health. So we can even backstep and talk a little bit about how to improve your oral health to minimize the bacteria or exposure to viral contents to your heart tissue. But at the end of the day, Coenzyme Q10 is critical for anybody who wants to improve their heart health. We call it the Coenzyme Q10. It was discovered by the Japanese. They study it extensively. When I was over there, I lived there for a year. They use infusions. They do CoQ10 infusions to reverse heart disease and heart damage. Heart disease is not the leading cause of death in Japan, and there's a reason for that. They offer an intense dosage via IV for these patients, and they recover if they do have heart attacks. But CoQ10 is something that can excite the cells of the heart. It is protective. It falls in the antioxidant category, and it becomes a key player in promoting your heart health. And if you, or like myself, I have a family history of heart disease, heart attacks. And so I know that's one part of my history that I know. CoQ10 is a critical aspect in that. Another thing that we do know that there is correlation to blood clotting and either heart attacks or blood clotting and stroke. Then it becomes critical. We look at K2. And so I have links down below where you can grab all these. But K2 is a major player in reducing the fibrins, the accumulation, the buildup, and the kind of congestion of your red blood cells. So if you have ever heard that you have thicker blood, or when you do a blood serum, a blood draw, it takes a little bit more time because your blood is not thin, then you have more fibrins in your blood. And those fibrins can clog and can congest not just your arteries, but the vascular channels, even in the brain and other areas of the body. And the K2 can help improve the flow of the blood. Now, circulation-wise, it can be helpful, Linda, for that. Just in terms of moving things along. It's like, kind of, you think about if you've ever had, many of us have had a drain that doesn't drain well. We throw some, liquid Drano in it. It's highly toxic, but that's usually what people use, or snake it. K2 is like the liquid Drano of your blood, and the fibrins. There is, and we see this with COVID. COVID turns on that fibrin development, and fibrins on their own can be very devastating. We have increase in fibrins when we see fibrotic tissue. We see fibroids in the breast, in the uterus. We see fibroids in other areas of the body. So it becomes really critical that you address that. But K2 is something that can lower the fibrin matter. We can also use nattokinase. That's actually derived from Japan. So Japan is just like natto is this, it's really gross. This is fermented bean goop. I mean, people love it. I tested it. I tried everything over there. There are a lot of things I didn't like, but I gave everything a whirl when I was there, and I lived with a family, so I ate all of the food. And natto is this fermented bean, and the fermented bean creates this nattokinase. It's this enzyme that actually breaks down these fibrins. And so you can use that. That is what we call a metabolic enzyme. And K2 works a little differently. It's not an enzyme, but it is very potent. So you can use those two together. Now, I do want to provide my medical disclaimer. If you are on any medication, particularly blood thinners, heparin, anything like that, do consult your doctor and your pharmacist before taking these. So this is not medical advice. Don't take it as such. But I just want to highlight some things that we know can be beneficial for some of these instances. Similarly, we do find alpha lipoic acid has a lot of research, a lot of data, and specifically addressing myocardial inflammation. So if there's heart inflammation, alpha lipoic acid provides the antioxidant protection. So you have CoQ10, antioxidant, alpha lipoic acid, antioxidant. Those two collectively are very beneficial for the heart. Years ago, there were studies about alpha lipoic acid and L-carnitine. I think it was L-carnitine given to rats, and I'm pretty positive it was L-carnitine, but literally it stopped the aging process. And so there's a lot of power in alpha lipoic acid, but it has been clinically proven as part of a therapeutic process for heart disease. Deb W. Last year, my grandson was having pain in his calf. When he went to the ER, he was told he had blood clots in his leg. from his hip to his ankle. I'm concerned about him and the virus. More than likely, he's probably been given medications to help break up the blood clots. And it might very well be, sometimes depending on how intense the blood clot is, sometimes they'll do a mesh barrier. So they'll go to that artery there in the leg and they'll just put this little mesh and it basically stops the blood clot from moving up. And his father, my son's cause of death was arterial sclerosis. So I will say K2 and, the nattokinase are really great for arterial sclerosis. So arterial sclerosis is from, short and sweet of it is an inability for the body to articulate minerals in the right place. And actually the body deposits calcium, bone. So your arteries become bony, and they become really brittle. And then they our arteries need to be palatable. They need to move around. They're not bony structures, but arterial sclerosis ends up being where we have these bony tissues. And, we can get scans, you can get carotid scans, you can have scans and CTs of all your arteries, and they can identify if there is any arterial sclerosis. It is very common for that to develop, but a lot of times it's a mineral deficiency in the first place that leads to that overdevelopment. So too much eating of calcium and rich foods and not enough magnesium, potassium, and all the other healthy nutrients. Okay, and I have linked all of these in the show notes below. The other thing that I do want to highlight, and this is just overall good for heart health, good for your gut, good for your skin, good for your hair, is using omegas. And so your omegas are really beneficial in terms of supporting your body and enriching your body's ability to it supplies antioxidants, but it also will remove toxic chemicals. It's a free radical scavenger. I love to recommend, it's Blue Ice by Green Pastures. And they basically use cod, fresh cod. It's wild caught in the Bering Sea and the Aleutian Island. And they ferment it. And this is what's different than your omega. So when they ferment it, it maintains D and K2 and some other core nutrients. And so this is really potent. I love this stuff. And I love that for women, especially if they have estrogen dominance. Omegas actually break up those estrogen bonds. So omegas are very protective. We need omegas for a good, healthy gut. Very, very powerful. Now, as far as an inflamed heart, yesterday, and I feel like every day, sometimes I'm a broken record, I'm talking about inflammation a lot. When you have systemic inflammation in your body, we need to lower those inflammation levels. And the supplement that's my go-to, because it's just well-rounded on all fronts, is Inflame X. This is what we sell in my Full Script store. There's a link down below. And Instagram, I'll post a link when it repurposes on Instagram. But Inflame X is my favorite. I love this as a very potent anti-inflammatory. It has white willow bark, which is the derivative, that's a natural aspirin, but it has the anti-inflammatory plus pain relieving. Some people have complained of chest pains and not heart palpitations, but they just kind of felt like an inflamed heart. I mean, when the heart's inflamed, it will expand. So you might feel some nerves, you might feel some experience where it's just enlarged. Will the heart stay that way? We're still in it to even know when this kind of tapers off, if it does. But an inflamed heart is not functioning optimally. And so that means you're not, your body's working overtime. There's more strain on the heart tissue, could lead to muscle weakness down the road of the heart. So the sooner you can address the inflammatory state, the sooner you're able to have and see that tissue recover. And that's the critical aspect where, we know that the ACE2 enzyme receptivity is triggered. So the ACE receptors, ACE2, we see that in the heart, in the lung, in the brain, the kidneys. The opportunistic COVID virus targets that. That's where those little stingers really attach on and are highly effective. So it becomes really critical that we look at how do we lower that inflammation? Because if the heart is inflamed, it's very likely that you're going to have other systemic inflammation. And so Inflame X has the white willow bark, it has ginger, it has turmeric and bromelain. It also has Indian frankincense gum resin powder. Frankincense it does not get the amount of notice that it needs. Frankincense is a very powerful substance, and it can eradicate some tumors. It has some potency, and even in breast cancer, there have been studies about frankincense with breast cancer. If you're curious about that, I have a whole breast health course, and you can access that on my website. It's really amazing, and I dig into frankincense specifically for that. Yucca is another root, and then ginger. So this is really a comprehensive anti-inflammatory, but also you want to eat for your heart. And so, the critical aspects are get rid of dairy, get rid of gluten, lower your animal-based proteins, up your plant-based proteins, particularly because plant-based proteins are easier to digest. And so when you have any degree of inflammation in any part of your body, you want to put some ease on the other organs. And so you don't want to bog every organ down, and especially eating a lot of heavy animal-based protein, will slow down that process. It requires more energy. That energy takes away from the energy of healing. And so you want to reserve the healing for the heart tissue and not have to bog down the gut. The other thing too is, we do see a lot of gut imbalances coming from animal-based proteins that are not easily able to be digested. It slows down the digestive process. You have more toxins. That toxin absorption, triggers the liver toxicity. Liver is cleansing, toxins from our blood. So we would just want to put less strain on the body. And that's why I often recommend plant-based for a healing protocol. I'm not against animal proteins. We do consume them in my household, but not a lot. I'm not a big fan. And you also need, if you do eat animal-based proteins, you need amino acids. So you need to grab your Bragg's amino acids. You need to be consuming digestive enzymes before you eat that product. And most people aren't. And so the act of eating an animal protein is actually more damaging to the body than not. Lori says she's vegan. Right now we're talking about heart health. So we'll stay on this topic. If you want any other topics, Psych Girl, I have a whole bunch of videos about thyroid health. All right, Craney's dealing with allergies. Yeah, it's about allergy season. If you're curious about allergies, I posted a video, I think it was last week. Is it COVID or is it allergies? And the heat has really kicked up a lot of that. And that, allergies cause inflammation. Let's see. Janet, I have our breast health course. Highly recommend. Yay, thank you, Janet. Sandra, someone tested COVID positive twice with symptoms. What can be the side effects of that? So they tested positive twice with symptoms. Well, the side effects, definitely, they need to have their heart assessed. The side effects could be, they could have blood clots or scarring of the lungs. So there's scarring of the lungs, inflamed heart tissue, myocarditis, Afib could be a factor. There could be neuro-COVID, where there's 3 stages. And I have a video about this. So a lot of these I've done videos on. I'm going to reference. I have a playlist that you can reference. But neuro-COVID, there's three stages to that. And so some is just, some neuro, like memory loss and things like that, confusion. I mean, there's different stages. And we've got several studies confirming neuro-COVID. But the latter, the worst, is the blood-brain barrier is compromised. And so there's this protective barrier that keeps the brain kind of contained in its own little cabinet space. And so the breaking of that barrier, we equate it to like what leaky gut is. The challenge when that gets broken, you have brain inflammation is one of the aspects. We have major neurological challenges, neurological disorders. We see short-term paralysis. There are a lot of side effects. And so COVID is a comprehensive illness. Side effects can be, they develop diabetes permanently. So some folks have crazy, insulin levels, blood sugar levels. They end up requiring insulin, and now they're a full-blown diabetic case, and they weren't. So the pre-existing conditions being whatever they were before, you can have people with no pre-existing conditions. All of a sudden, they've had an amputated leg or arm, and they're diabetics, and they have to relearn how to walk, talk. I mean, it's comprehensive. Debs is just want you to know, I'm so satisfied with my electrolyzer. Yay, force of nature. And if you guys are curious about what she's talking about, this is the force of nature. This is a cleaning system where you add water. There's like a little line right here. You add water, and it comes with these packets of salt and vinegar. And the electrolyzer turns salt, water, and vinegar into this powerful, toxic-free, antibacterial, antiviral killing solution that you can spray. And it becomes cleaner than your Clorox and bleach and all that stuff. And you don't have to worry about never getting it on the shelves of your supermarkets because people are stocking up on that. Let's see, Joanne, I will post my breast course in the description box. So I'll post that. And I'll post it to my Instagram stories as well as my my YouTube feed. I'm going to create a special coupon code. The initial pricing when it launched, it was the special YouTube pricing. It's gone up, but I'll give you guys the coupon code. So just stay tuned for that. It is a very in-depth. I think it's 26 or 28 videos, DIY, educational videos, tutorials that I built. It's very descriptive. I demonstrate on my own body a whole bunch of ways to improve your breast health. And women who have fibroids, cysts in their breast tissue, calcifications, who have troubles with, you go in for a mammogram and then you need a follow-up, that is really targeted at any of those women, as well as ladies that have family members that have had cancer in the past. If you want to reduce the risk of breast cancer, the course is really beneficial at discussing and demonstrating and providing resources for you to minimize unhealthy breast tissue. And the good news is that, like, for instance, breast cancer takes about 6 to 8 years to develop. Most of the time, we're not aware of that. And in that period of time, you can do a lot of things to detox, clear, and really eradicate some of the unhealthy tissue. And I explain more about bras, and I go into a lot. I talk about bras and your breasts, tissue, the health. I talk about the lymphatics. I talk about diet, and talk about hormones, like what all hormones are involved and what needs to be balanced. And so it's extremely descriptive. It was a major labor of love. And I'm so grateful. I'm actually, it's been out now for almost a year, and I have had major reports from my participants that their scans are totally different. Like the doctors are like, what have you been doing? Like your tissue looks really, really healthy. And fibroids or cysts that were suspect or to be monitored are completely gone. Gone are the days of needing larger cup sizes during, the PMS phase. So it's pretty amazing. Okay. Let's see. Let's see. I'm looking at all your comments. Clive's on. Hey, Clive. Letitia. Thanks, Letitia. Oh, yes. Letitia's reminding everybody to give me a thumbs up. I appreciate that. And definitely like and share this. And when I do my little editing and stuff, there's a whole bunch of stuff I have to do on the back end. Please go back and comment. That really helps the viewership. And I also want to make a note. I I forgot to mention yesterday when we were talking about like people and, how they are free to, elicit comments and and commentary, and a lot of it sometimes is negative. I just want to tell you guys that I know that there are ads on my videos. I have no control over what ads are played. Like, I've gotten some comments about, I'm sick and tired of seeing these types of ads. I don't do that. And so YouTube has gone through what they call an adpocalypse. It's the third since I've been on like regularly. But we've had a lot of ads pulled from YouTube because of the economy. And so I know YouTube, it has probably a slimmer pool of ads that they're running, but they also just know they're really strategic. Like companies pay YouTube for ad space. It's like a billboard, and they will target people like me. So they might even target me. Like I have competitors that will target me and post their ads. If I were smart, I would do the same. I just don't have time to do that yet. But they will post, so if I talk about surgery, I have surgical centers that will advertise. I don't do any of that. That's all YouTube. It's Google AdSense. It's its whole engine in Google, but it explains to you why you might see relevant related ads to the video topic. It's because of my title. And then Google requires me to put in all these tags and descriptives. Well, they use that for advertising. And my benefit is I get paid like, 0.0001 cents for an ad or something crazy like that. But at the end of the day, I have no control over that. But the ads do support my channel. And so I'm appreciative of folks who do watch them. So, ads help finance our channel. It's not by any means, we're not buying second homes or anything like that off of the ads, but I don't control the ads that are played. So just know that I have no control over that. And Joanne says, Force of Nature pops up for me every time because I purchased it and I loved it. Yeah. So, Force of Nature, and this is the other thing, like there's just a whole bunch of behind the scenes stuff. So for instance, like Joanne's situation, if you sometimes watch an ad, or even if you visited Facebook, a page, or seen, checked out somebody's website, they will put a pixel. And so it's like a little tag. And so the computers are smart. And if you've ever visited that tag, you get targeted. So that's why, like, if you are shopping online on Amazon or wherever, and then you go to Facebook and you see the ads very similar to what you're shopping, you're like, how did it know that? It's called a pixel, and it knows what you're shopping for. So it's this intuitive, brain, and it's based on all the tagging and stuff. And so like companies use that, big companies and smaller ones. Like there's at some point I need to get on board with that stuff. But I don't at this point. I'm a one-woman show. Okay. So yeah, so I just want to explain that because I know a lot of people have been curious about it. Yes. So Joanne says, so are you saying, doctor, that if we click on the ad, that's when you get support? So if you just watch it, so if you let the ad, usually it goes like some channels, and I don't know the things around it, but like sometimes you have to, like, for instance, Netflix, like we have Netflix and we watch YouTube TV. So we've gotten rid of all of our cable, and like Netflix now, there's 6 sequences of ads. I can't skip those ads. And so that's how Netflix makes their money, or a good portion of their money. But like with YouTube, it'll give you like 3 or 4 seconds, and then it'll give you the countdown, and then you can hit skip. If you watch the full video, that's when I get paid, but again, it's like 0.001%. So, yeah, so everybody's loving Force of Nature. So yeah, so lots of endorsements for Force of Nature. I will say they're a really wonderful company. This is the second version. I love this electrolyzer better than the first one. So this is all one compartment. I don't lose anything. It's so wonderful. And you can auto ship like the little refill packs. You get 5. That for us, like a pack will last about 7 to 10 days, and you can store, like I use glass container, little spray containers. I just store mine in the fridge. So you can do that. Yeah, Lori, Big Brother's always watching and listening. Totally. Algorithms. Yep, Donna is right. It's all about the algorithm. And YouTube always changes the algorithm, which is why when I say, okay, you guys, don't forget to like and share. That's part of the algorithm. So that helps YouTube push up my content. So views are big, thumbs up. So hit the thumbs up right now, everybody. Click, 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 click. That helps. The other thing that helps is when it's shared. They also monitor how long you watch video content. And then YouTube will know like what you watch. And then whatever you've been watching most, they will recommend. And so they recommend. So I often get recommended to other people who don't even know anything about my channel, but they've maybe searched about COVID and heart health. And so my videos will pop up. That's how people hear about me. Or they've been searching for a particular topic on YouTube. And that was really just a little backstory. When I started to look at, I had this YouTube channel, but I wasn't focused on it by any means. When we moved, it's like, okay, well, what can I do? And I don't know if I want to set up shop. And there's just a lot of details to do that. But YouTube was already something I had been slowly working on. And when I went full time into it, there's this whole world of like how to do things in the right way with YouTube. And so one of the things that I try and always do, for sure, with all my edited content is to answer a question or answer a problem. So what is a problem that a viewer has, or they're searching for an issue, health ailment or issue? What is that issue? And what are they typing in? And so a lot of times if you've searched for me and found me in search, it's because I've kind of predicted, based on common questions I get every day, what people want or what they're looking for. And so that's really kind of the operation that I took initially. Now I ask a lot of you. So, there's a poll right now that is shaping what video I'm editing right now for Sunday based on what you guys voted on. You want to hear more. And so, my newer COVID kind of resource guide. I don't know. I have to label it in such a way that it's not going to get dinged by the powers that be, but also delivers powerful information in the management of COVID-related symptoms. So I'm working on that now. That will be out. But yeah, so that's the world of YouTube. Wish I could send you flowers. Oh, you're so sweet. So Friday, it's my birthday. We're going to celebrate with a live Q&A, and I think we might do a Bellini. I'm going to probably do a Bellini morning. I love champagne and Bellinis. So if you guys want to join me with a little bubble on Friday, I'll be answering your questions. And then I am taking the day off. I'm very excited. Brian has ordered one of my favorite cakes from our favorite, this one woman here in Atlanta. Oh, Instagram, I'll see you later. Okay, Instagram just went off. Let me just save this. So I have a birthday cake. It's there's a woman who, we met her. She had a food truck in a city that they used to, in the summertime, every Thursday, they do like Food Truck Thursday. So it's really cool, like at a block party. And we started going to that when we moved here. I'm a huge fan of food trucks. I think it's fantastic. And so I love her stuff. I follow her on Instagram, and she has this, her thing is cookie dough. And it's like clean, good, healthy. It's not like healthy, but like it's clean cookie dough. And she makes cookie dough ice cream and cookie dough cakes. And so she has this one cake that is this like, it's this beautiful 4 or 5 layers of like the cookie dough goo and then the cookie dough cake. Like, I'm so excited. So that's like my treat. I try and refrain from eating stuff like that as much as I can, but it's COVID time, and this is my birthday in COVID. We're not going anywhere. We're supposed to be at this point right now, we were supposed to be, I think, in Switzerland, based on, leaving my schooling. I'd be done with my certification program in Germany, and my family would have joined me, and we'd be in Switzerland hanging out with a friend of mine that I knew in Japan. But now I'm celebrating from home. So I'm going to celebrate with you guys. So definitely do join me. I'm going to have my assistant put together some imaging for us to have like a little, like a birthday brunch toast or something. So so it'll be a virtual birthday party. Mm-hmm. just so weird. This year has been a crazy year, hasn't it? But, at the end of the day, you have to do the best that you can and make the most out of it. And so I'm excited to do that with all of you. Brian's taking the day off, and so it should be fun. I'd love to, actually, I'd love to go somewhere, but I'm just not comfortable doing that yet. But if there were to be a place I'd go to, there's this really cool company that it's somewhere in North Carolina in the mountains that they do glamping. They have these glamping sites. You have to check it out. It's like, I think it might be called NC Glamping, but they have these like really cool, like round glass, like pods in the middle of the forest. And, but they're really nice inside. Like they're very Pinterest worthy and like Instagram worthy. And people camp there. And so it's not like pitching a tent camping, because I don't like that, but I could tell a glamp. So I thought at some point I want to do that. But again, it's one of those scenarios where like, I'd want to bring my UV light and plug it in and sanitize the whole entire place before. But we have thought about that because we could take the dogs and it'd be easy to do. And we have one that loves to swim. And so yeah, I'm totally going to indulge on Friday. All right. So thanks, Darlene. She says, this is my go-to info every morning. As sad as the content can be, the info is real and I find comfort. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I didn't really go over this either, but that whole, the frontier doctors, just be aware that they're still getting a lot of coverage right now. But so much of what those folks said it's just so unfounded. And the one woman who kind of took the lead on that press conference they had in front of apparently it was the Supreme Court. I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. She also has made statements outside of her work with COVID that endometriosis comes from apparently some weird demon and evil spirits. And so very, very outlandish. We definitely have to kind of consider your source, if you will. But yeah, pretty crazy. Yeah. So thanks, everybody. All right. So I will let you all go. I hope you found this helpful. Do check out the links down below. Force of Nature should be in the links as well. If not, I'll put that in, and I will also add in, the breast course. I'll include a link to my breast course. I need to create a little coupon code. So that might take me a little bit of time. I have to go play with Gabriel. We have a window in the morning where like we try and get out of the heat. And so we go down to our little pool area. There's a flat surface and he rides a bike and I sit in the shade. And so I'm going to go do that with him now, but I will post definitely some details now, and then just watch for the YouTube community tab. That's where I usually try and communicate that stuff. All right, friends. So thank you, and join me tomorrow. I will see you then. Have a great day. Thanks, Pat. Thanks, everybody. Good to see you. Bye.